bags where horror lies.
Rob Georgia here with you, aka VHS82 apostrophe with week number 549. We conclude a month here in theme week that is in the end only men. Compliments of Sam, our Thursday reviewer. And so all week long, it'll be interesting to see how these drop in the choices that some of us make. For me, I decided to conclude a month of Italian cinema with Dario Argento's conclusion of his Animal trilogy and Four Flies on Grey Velvet. And I'm going to be really careful here because it is a giallo. Gialli, right? And so it is a mystery. And so I think what I'm going to do is David Lewin, of course, gifted me some time back with a bunch of Shameless titles, and one of them being this one, which I did not have in my collection. And so I do have the other two, Cat o' Nine Tails and The Bird with Crystal Plumage, which I absolutely freaking adore and love. I love that freaking movie. But this one really grew on me too with this latest viewing, and even stumbled into a podcast which did a remarkable job just getting into it, and the layering and everything, and the discussion of it. And so this one really sort of, although I think the main protagonist in Bird, and even outside the trilogy Deep Red, are much more, much more, I'm not sure what the right word is, but Roberto here is our main protagonist, although he makes some iffy choices along the way that would put some of that idea in jeopardy just a little bit. But it is 549, and Four Flies on Grey Velvet, Dario Argento from 1971. And so I'm going to do what I don't usually do, just because I'm not going to speak much into the film. But I do want to just read off the back here. I think it's well worth it. If I can here. Who is the deranged maniac persecuting and mentally torturing? And boy, does the killer ever. Celebrated rock musician Roberto Tobias, which he happens to be a drummer for a band. First, he's implicated in a horrifying stabbing, and this is what opens up the film, and is soon surrounded by other senseless slaughter. And not just that, but man, whomever the killer may or may not be, they have almost every access to every aspect of his life, which is just tormenting, man. The last strange images captured on one murder victim's eye retina contain possibly the only clue to the demented criminal manipulator, and their identity will take Roberto over the edge of sanity to a shock horror peak in Dario Argento's classic giallo chiller. The whole retina thing, I think it was an idea back then, which was thought of, at least in the moment, as to whether or not it gave real legitimate possibilities or not, but they play on it. And it really does help with the final moments of the film. This homicidal frenzy completed Dario Argento's revered Animal trilogy, which begins in 70 with The Bird, alongside The Bird and the Cat o' Nine Tails, that dubbed him the Italian Hitchcock, leading to Suspiria, and his worldwide master of horror reputation, and Argento's unmistakable flair for creating fear to lavish style is a stunning show in this slick, sick, primal scream, with a shattering slow motion climax given further operatic violence by one of the geniuses, Ennio Morricone, God rest his soul, most memorable of scores, which ironically, from what I've heard and my understanding, is Dario didn't even want him to do the score. That wasn't the vibe or the tone aesthetically in terms of sound that he wanted to carry this film. And yet, Ennio, I think, delivers one of the great moments in his score, which he is the maestro, right? I mean, he might be the greatest of them all. But very quickly, Dario will transition to Goblin, which will just sort of quicken the pace in his aesthetics and what he will bring, which I think will find the ultimate climax in Suspira. But look, Dario's ride really doesn't end. And I'm not going to say, I mean, it doesn't really begin its descent until after 87 when opera. After that, one can argue and debate how much of a drop-off is there or not there. But I think one can also argue that opera may be the last great moment for the maestro, the Italian Hitchcock. So what to say about this movie without giving it away? It's interesting. It's a film that really does play... Well, if you've seen it, or you do see it, and you get through the entirety of it, it does have an interesting comment, I think, and relevant to some discussions afoot today, but from an interesting perspective, I think, and perhaps not so friendly to some. It's interesting. It's funny how, film is subjective and up for grabs as far as interpretation of the viewer of the subject material and what the director may or may not have intended. There's always unintended consequences with anything that is subjective, especially when you allow several decades to roll by and you really do kind of look at it and you start to, in terms of the time that you live in, right? It's interesting. It causes you to perhaps give a different thought of a mode of understanding to certain relevant things in the moment. And part of this is, I guess, the very nature of our theme, and in the end, only men, sort of gives, at least, I don't know, it kind of does shine a little bit of light towards the great end. I won't get into it though. I really want this to be his entire Animal trilogy is best experienced as cold and unknowing as possible. And the bird, man, I always fall back on that. And I don't know, man, if one was to force me to which of the three is the weakest one, I would almost say Cat o' Nine Tails, at least for me personally. That's what Carl Malden, I'm pretty sure he was in that one. But it's not like that's there and the other two are here. It's not like that at all. But for me, I'd probably go, Bird, and then Four Flies on Grey Velvet, and then Cat o' Nine Tails. But all three are very enjoyable, and what a catalyst to all that's going to unfold in terms of Dario's filmography and what lies ahead for him and for us as we enjoy it, right? I'll say the opening set that is sort of laid out within the opening titles, and plus there is a little bit of a foreshadowing of the pulsating nature of a heart that we'll see in the beginning title sequence for Suspira. We'll see here as well, as we're sort of there and now. And there is a good use of a dream sequence that sort of foreshadows possibilities of endings or an end. There is an antagonist, and in what I read off the back about the being implicated in a fatal stabbing, that of its own self is a jack-in-the-box of interesting things and how that is utilized, and that opens us up into the film. And then very quickly the amount of torment on Roberto is just continues to get ratcheted up. I have to mention too, the detective, that he will ultimately, against his own seemingly better judgment, but ultimately it is good judgment, he tries to keep everything contained and let everything sort of sort itself out without the involvement of too many other outsiders, which is interesting. And unfortunately, the Rosario, I think his name is, the inspector, is such an enjoyable character, and it's interesting to watch him go from seemingly he is the guy who has like never solved anything in his life, and yet for him this is the moment that his whole life has led up to, and so that's an interesting component of the film as well, and where all that leads. And there are several interesting moving. Delia is an interesting character. It's a lot of neat little moving parts. It may not be the end reveal. I mean, you know, we sort of get little glimpses of possibilities along the way and the journey. I won't say it's quite as polished as, say, Deep Red is, which that may be his greatest giallo. I mean, that's just so stinking awesome. But much of his filmography. Look, we're still talking about it today, and we're talking movies that came out in the early 70s, for crying out loud, and we're still talking. And thankfully, with physical media still alive and well, we're always getting new releases and better releases. And now, of course, we get into the whole 4K aspect of things. Which, you know, reminds me, you know, as we, you know, near May, with May comes June, and then finally that first week of July where I'm supposed to have Anthropophagus and Absurd on 4K. Here, I cannot wait from 88 Films. So anyways, yeah, if you've never seen the Animal Trilogy, you really need to see it. And as cold as possible, so that you can really soak up and enjoy not just the journey, but ultimately the destination you arrive at, and how Dario just sort of did it. Man, yeah, some good stuff. So I'm just gonna lay that out there and leave it. And yeah, you need to see it. Some good stuff there. Look, we're about to hit a new month here, and I'm expected today to get the next two films in the Quatermass trilogy. And the second weekend, of course, in May is Kino Label Week. And so I'll be looking at the Quatermass Experiment. But I decided to fill out the other random weeks with the other two films and just cover the entire trilogy. And then, of course, we'll end with the theme week at the end of the month will be Ghost Hunting Gone Bad, something to that effect. And so I'll be looking at the Deep House by the two that brought us films like Among the Living and Inside, I think, and of course Leatherface, the pair of French directors there who helped contribute, of course, to French extreme cinema, right? So anyways, that is the month that lies ahead. And but for today, we sort of wrap up a month of just Italian cinema with a classic from Argento that you might not have seen in a very long time or never seen. Highly suggest you definitely should check it out. And as I wear all my Georgia garb today, with great hopes and expectations for a new season that is will eventually dawn on us, as always, we just had a draft. And so with that, the Bills picked up Georgia center, and so that's a nice pickup, right? So anyways, with that, we always end these things off with Go Bills.
This is not a dream. Not a dream.
We might be useful to you.